So we're entering what I call an age of techno-determinism, in which 4 American billionaires are going to try and determine your future and mine. Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, Mark Zuckerberg, and Marc Andreessen have the money and the political power to ensure that their vision of the future is realized. Elon Musk spent $300 million getting Donald Trump elected. In Argentina, that same dynamic is playing out as Milei aligns himself with Musk. In the United States, its power is morphing into what some are calling techno-fascism, with the rise of AI, the forward control the economy, the elections, reduce democracy, and exacerbate inequality. And abroad, Trump has begun a brave new era of American imperialism in Venezuela, Greenland, Panama, and most seriously in the war in Iran. But imperialism and monopoly capitalism are closely linked. And Musk is doing the same with his X social network, pushing people to the Premium X and adding in his Grok AI service, which he will also sell to your government and your military, just like he did in the U.S. And as Dario Amodei, the head of Anthropic, who refused to let the Department of War in the U.S. use Claude to spy on Americans, has pointed out, Musk has no problem with using AI to spy on you and your citizens, and no problem with using AI to create autonomous weapons that make a decision to kill without a human involved. Peter Thiel and Palantir have recently published a set of principles extolling the importance of hard power and the use of AI in warfare and deterrence, saying we must resist this idea of pluralism. But many of the schemes the big tech billionaires dream up are disconnected from reality. Human robot has a hard time distinguishing between a man and a broom and a man with a gun at 100 meters. Zuckerberg has shut down the metaverse after having spent $100 billion. And I can assure you that your children will never live in a colony on Mars that Elon Musk wants to build. But let's be clear, AI is coming to your life whether you want it or not. Already there's more AI content on the internet than there is human-built content. And in the music market, is overwhelmed with AI-generated slop. Spotify said that 250,000 AI-generated tunes will be uploaded every single day to Spotify. This is taking money out of the pockets of real musicians. There are only 2 possible outcomes of this situation. If the AI boom continues, it could replace more than 50% of the white-collar jobs in 10 years, leading to mass unemployment. But if the AI bubble bursts, it could make the 2008 recession look like a picnic. And the Trump administration is preparing to for potential civil unrest by training the National Guard troops to be a quick reaction force to put down riots. And the tech oligarchs are preparing to flee as they build secure bunkers in New Zealand and on private islands in the South Pacific. This is Peter Thiel's bunker in New Zealand, because when there's 220 million people unemployed, he's going to want to leave the country, I promise. I believe what we need is a grand compromise between big tech and democratic governments. This would involve a 3% tax on the revenue of all AI companies. In the US, it could generate $10 billion a year into a sovereign wealth fund that would pay a dividend to workers who are unemployed by AI. But to make this happen, we need a cultural resistance to Trump, Relay, and the billionaires. We had this in the 1960s and the 1970s. As some of you know, I worked for Bob Dylan in the 1960s. It was a very important part of the civil rights movement and in the anti-war movement. But I don't see any similar kind of resistance today from the artistic community. Of course, Argentina had a very rich culture for many years. When Milei says this is a horrible culture that you have, and he wants to rewire the Argentine mind, those are his words. He hates your culture. He hates Burgos. He hates all of that history. So I believe we need a counterculture. And we had one in the US in the 60s and 70s. And it spawned kind of new things. Because libertarians like Musk and Milei tell a big lie, that only freedom and individualism lead to success. When the great anthropologist Margaret Mead was asked what was the first sign of civilization she discovered, she pointed not to some crude clay pot, but rather to this healed bone femur. Just look at this. This is a broken bone, leg bone, from a caveman. And what she said was, if you broke your leg when you were a caveman, you would be tiger bait. You'd be eaten by an animal. So obviously somebody picked up this man who broke his leg, carried him back to his village, fed him, wrapped his leg, and somehow healed him and took care of him until his bone healed. And for me, that was the first sign of civilization, because civilization is about helping each other. So imagine if every country had this huge fund. Some people call it universal basic income, but this is a fund derived from the big tech companies to pay for people who are put out of work. And perhaps the world of the future 10 years from now is that you only work 15 hours a week. And then you have all this leisure time. And in the 1930s, the famous British economist Lord Keynes says, the permanent problem will be educating people to deal with leisure. And if that's true, then what would we do? Would you learn to play a musical instrument? Would you write that novel you've always wanted to do? What would you do with your time if you only had to work 15 hours a week? So we have a community in America called the Amish. And the Amish have shunned technology. And they have a lot of time. So if someone in the community decides they need a barn, the whole community shows up, and in 3 days, they put the barn up. They don't require any money for it. The person who's putting up the barn feeds everybody for 3 days, and then everyone goes back to their farm and does their farming, and that person has a barn. This sense of community and community projects might be part of this new world that we have. Now, I know this sounds very idealistic, but in the last year, I've been working with artificial intelligence pretty deeply. It does most of my research for my books and things like that, and it's getting really better. So we're not going to eliminate artificial intelligence. So what we have to do is think of ways that it doesn't just put billions in Elon Musk's pockets, that it helps the whole community. And that will be the thing we have to think about. So,
muchísimas gracias, Jonathan. Y volvemos a agradecer a la concurrencia. Pasamos